Hi everybody, welcome to another video in our series about the fermented cod liver oil series. I'm here today with Dr. Rudi Moerck. Welcome, Rudi.
Hello.
Can I call you Rudi?
Of course, you can call me Dr. Rudi.
Dr. Rudi.
I am starting a website which is just being built right now, and it's dr-rudi.com.
drrudi.com, and that's Rudi with an I.
Yes.
Yes. Great. So that's going to be your personal website.
Yeah, it's under freedom of information and freedom of speech. And so I will not promote any of my company's products. My company is called Valensa.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will just talk generically about supplements, drugs,
Great.
disease, and things like that. And you can do that under the First Amendment.
Great. So Rudi, I found you online. I was really excited that you had time to talk to us today. We are really going to drill into the science of this, and you're actually somebody who understands the background and the history of fermented cod liver oil. When I called you about it, you're like, "Oh yeah, I know all about that."
Well, I know a lot about it because I'm always interested in other cultures, and we work with a company called Aker in Norway. So I've been to Norway many, many times, and I also traveled the countryside to see how this whole cod liver oil thing started hundreds and hundreds of years ago, maybe 1,000 years ago. And I found it very interesting about how cod liver oil is made today and how it was made way back when.
Yeah, yeah. So this is going to be a great conversation. It's going to be very interesting. Just a little I've talked to you so far, I've already learned a lot. Let's talk, before we get into it, about your background, just so people know who you are and what you've done. You talked about Valensa.
Yes, I've been running Valensa for about 9 years. I'm a German-American, born in Germany, worked in the chemical industry, then in the pharmaceutical industry for 26 years. Worked for Catalytical Pharmaceuticals. I worked at the Glaxo Wellcome site in North Carolina. I helped develop 17 drugs, clinical trials. I have one drug that I invented called Renazorb for kidney dialysis patients. But my philosophy involves human health. It's not about natural products versus drug, etc. I'm interested in human health, and I will do the things that are right for human health, including recommending certain pharmaceutical drugs where appropriate, or supplements that you can take to counteract some of the side effects of pharmaceutical drugs. And then I talk about food and natural products that can really help improve your health and age gracefully.
Yeah. Just so people know, you've not been paid to do this interview. You literally just decided to jump on the Skype call with me, correct?
Well, again, it's my interest in human health, and no, I have not been paid for this, and I don't want to be paid for this. And I think it's just, I just want to contribute to the health of your viewers.
Right, right. And the reason I wanted to get you on to talk with us is because people have a lot of questions. They have a lot of questions about fermented cod liver oil, how it's produced, and then how other types of cod liver oil are produced, as you said, modern day methodology, and to talk about, how this stuff works and what the ramifications are of different types of production methods. That's what we're going to talk about. You do have your PhD in organic chemistry, correct?
Yes, I have an undergraduate degree in biology, and mostly botany related. And then since the only job way back in the 60s that I could have gotten was a park ranger, I decided to go into organic chemistry. So I got my doctorate in organic chemistry. And after that, I did postdoctoral work at Ohio State University for the Institute of Medicine. I had an NIH grant and an NSF, National Science Foundation grant, to study the synthesis of certain tranquilizers, like the benzodiazepines, Valium, if you will. And after that, I worked for a company called Degussa in Germany, where I invented a lot of their technology for making amino acids using enzymatic technology, using plant-based and enzymatic-based technologies. So you can make natural products from chemicals by using enzymes to modify them.
Okay. Yeah. So you're on LinkedIn. People can find you on LinkedIn, Moerck, Merck, same as the Merck as the drug company, but different spelling. Okay. Yeah. The point of bringing all that up is just that you are very, very knowledgeable in this space with a ton of experience. Which I am not. I am not a scientist. I don't even remember high school chemistry. I don't remember anything about it. So I wanted to talk to somebody who actually understands this stuff. All right. You're not paid. Oh, are you considered a competitor? Because I know you make krill oils. One of the things you guys do. You make a lot of different nutraceuticals. Are you had you ever even heard of Green Pasture products prior to me calling you today?
No, I haven't. And we are mostly a botanical-based company. We do not make krill oil. We buy krill oil from a company called Aker in Norway. And the reason why we even got into krill oil was for two reasons. One is that krill oil contains astaxanthin, which is a product that we extract from algae, from a plant. And so we were very interested in that. Krill oil has algae, basically an algae extract in it, just like wild salmon. The red color of salmon is astaxanthin. And then the second reason we got into krill oil is that even though I'm a biologist-based guy, there are some things in the plant world that you cannot get, like EPA, DHA, phospholipids that you find in krill oil. You also find these things in herring roe, which is our newest project. So I don't have an interest in, it's got to be an animal product, or it's got to be a fish product, or it's got to be a botanical product. I'm interested in human health, and I'll do whatever I need to go. I go wherever I need to go to make sure I get the right products for those applications.
And you don't sell your products to customers directly, so you couldn't even be a competitor.
We're a B2B business, and some of our products show up on the consumer shelf. For instance, our joint health product is a formulated product that contains krill oil and added astaxanthin, is on the market as Mega Red Joint Health. And it's a very good product, but we don't sell it directly. That's a company called Schiff sells that.
And Dr. Mercola carries some of your products as well.
Yes, we've licensed some of our products to Dr. Mercola. I've done about 20 videos with Dr. Mercola. The most recent one is about omega-3 oils and edible oils. That video is about 3 years old, but he recast it recently. It had 500,000 hits, which was astonishing for me.
Yeah, so I did see that video, and you talked a lot about polyunsaturated fatty acid, or PUFA. Let's start there. Let's talk about what a PUFA is compared to, say, a saturated fat.
Okay. Polyunsaturated fats could be things like ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, or LA, which is an omega-6. ALA is omega-3. It could be also polyunsaturated. They could be EPA or DHA, which have different chain lengths. And EPA and DHA generally are found in things like fish or krill or herring roe, whereas ALA and LA come from plants. Corn oil is mostly LA. Chia oil is about the ratio of ALA to LA is about 3 to 1. Perilla oil is about 6 to 1. Now, your diet contains a lot of omega-6, no matter who you are. Even if you're a vegetarian or vegan, since you don't eat butter and you don't eat animal fats, you're going to have a lot of LA in your diet, and that's an inflammatory material. If you don't balance it with an equal amount or more of ALA, omega-3, you're going to have inflammation in your body. And there is a body of evidence that vegans and vegetarians who eat cakes and bread and things like that with LA in them have actually a higher, well, their mortality is actually, they die younger than people that eat a little bit of meat, and they have a lot more heart attacks and strokes. And I believe that, and this is really fairly new research, I believe that low-level chronic inflammation is basically the root of virtually all disease. And low-level chronic inflammation can be caused by a number of things. One of them is too much omega-6 in your diet, too much corn oil, too much canola oil, too much sunflower oil, safflower oil. And these sound very nice. Sunflower oil, wow, that sounds sunny and bright. And safflower oil, it sounds so nice. But these things are very bad oils. You have to have some omega-6 in your diet or else you would die. Your body can't make it. And you have to have ALA in your body or else you would die. You don't have to have added EPA or DHA because you can make those from the other two. Now, the fish oil people who have obviously a bias, they'll tell you, well, the conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA is very difficult and very inefficient. That's very true. However, your body only makes them on demand. It doesn't have a little factor in there making these things until EPA and DHA are coming out of your ears. It makes it on demand. And one of the reasons why I'm interested in fats and oils is because of my own health, my own longevity. I'm in Chinese years, I'm 70 years old. In American years, I'm 69. That's, by the way the Chinese figure out about the pro-life and anti-abortion. Because if you're actually, when you're older, then that means you've been alive for a year.
I heard this before, and it makes a lot of sense. You actually should start when the point you're conceived, not when you're born. You should start counting. Yeah.
So I'm not a rabid pro-life person, but I like the Chinese philosophy that you start living the day you're conceived. Right? Yeah. So, but anyway, getting back to fats and oils, and as you get older, the conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA is less efficient. So therefore, I always recommend some supplementation as you get older. But I'm of the krill oil camp. So you should have ALA in your diet, even if you're taking, fish oil. I think you should have krill oil or herring roe oil in your diet. And the reason why I like herring roe is that we now sell a mixture of, again, we're a B2B business, so we don't sell to consumers. Don't call me up to buy our stuff. We now have a product that where we use perilla oil to extract herring roe phospholipids out of herring eggs, if you will. Roe is an egg. And we make a product that has ALA, EPA, and DHA phospholipids in it, and it's ovo-vegetarian. Okay?
It's an egg. Is that the thinking?
From egg, ovo.
Yeah. That's funny.
And I think it's also a much more sustainable fishery than other fisheries. And the Norwegians are really great at both cod, sardines, and herring.
Okay. So the point is, we do need some, you're saying we need some of these other oils, but we eat a lot of the wrong oils, like the soybean oil and the canola oil and all the stuff that's really rampant in our diet.
Right. And they lead to inflammation, low-level chronic inflammation. And I met a retinal surgeon, and he told me he can look in your eyes. He can tell you whether you have heart disease, diabetes, and all these diseases just from the inflammation and the way your retina looks. And so the eyes are a window to your health. He and I have been having this dialogue about low-level inflammation causing things like diabetes, cancer, especially heart disease. That's the number one thing that you get from too much omega-6.
Okay. So fish oils, it's not a bad, you said it's a good thing to take fish oil as you age. What are some of the benefits of taking fish oil?
Well, there are two kinds of fish oil. One are the unrefined fish oils, which still have some heavy metals in them, like mercury. These are very unstable. I don't recommend taking those. But then there's also the purified fish oils or concentrated fish oils where some distillation process has taken place. They are more stable, but that's more stable than something that's extremely unstable.
Right.
So they're still not totally stable. They're very sensitive to oxygen. They have a very low shelf life. Do not keep them at room temperature. Buy small bottles of them. Keep them in your refrigerator. And they can even go rancid inside capsules because oxygen can get into capsules.
Okay. So the point is, though, that a polyunsaturated fatty acid is going to go rancid. And what are the things that cause rancidity? I'll say it and tell me if I'm correct. They are air, again, my high school chemistry, right? Air, light, heat, and moisture. Is that right?
Moisture is probably not a big factor, but you're right. Air or oxygen in the air, heat certainly. The other thing is contact with heavy metals, or if they have heavy metals in them, like mercury, those cause free radical reactions and cause a rancidification.
What about actual metals? Like if you were to store something in a metal container, would that cause rancidity?
If the oil is in a metal container, that's definitely a no-no.
Really?
No, not even stainless steel is a no-no. Okay. Should be in a glass or plastic container.
Yeah, because you hear like all these fish oils, you're supposed to store them in the fridge and in a dark. They often come in a dark container.
They're photochemically unstable too. Light can cause free radicals. Heavy metals can cause free radicals. Oxygen in its ground state is a free radical.
Right.
So-called triplet oxygen is a free radical in its ground state. So oxygen is what gives you life, but also can kill you.
Antioxidant isn't antioxidation. Oxidation is the same thing as going rancid. So right. So that's the idea. Everybody knows antioxidants are good. They don't know why. Free radicals are what's coming from this oxidation or this radical. Rancidity. It's death, right?
Yeah. And the fats in your body, and my body too, they can go rancid inside your body. And you can eat rancid fats and you could store them inside your body.
Wow.
And they are definitely carcinogens. Rancid fat is a carcinogen. Rancid fats are very, very unhealthy.
People know what free radicals are. They've heard that. Oftentimes they know that causes cancer. So eating a rancid fat, I didn't know you could actually store it in your body. That's so interesting.
Sure you can.
Wow.
It depends on your body mass ratio. If you're a thin person, you're not going to have a lot of fat. And therefore, even if you eat something rancid, it probably will be burned as energy. But if you're overweight or you have those love handles and things, that fat can be rancid inside your body and continuously supply your body through your lymph system. That fat moves around in your body, through your system. And, like breast cancer, well, there's lymph nodes right near breasts, and breasts are very fatty tissues. So it's not surprising when you have carcinogens in the environment that you can get breast cancer.
Okay. All right.
With prostate cancer also.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Your body, I've heard that you store toxins in fat, that the body stores toxins in fat.
That's right. A lot of the toxins, a lot of the chlorinated biphenyls that were made in the 1960s and 70s, which are now pretty much out, but they're persistent. They don't break down. They're very fat soluble. A lot of these carcinogens are very fat soluble. But the key point is this, that, for instance, when Purdue produces chickens, and some of the best operations in the world, some of the cleanest operations in the world, they continuously monitor the fat. As you know, underneath the chicken's skin, there's always a fat layer. They continuously monitor this. and then they measure the rancidity level of it. Because if the rancidity level of a chicken's meat is high, it's going to taste terrible, right? And so these really good producers like Purdue, they monitor this, and then when the levels get too high, they won't sell that meat, or they'll find out if there's something in the feed that these chickens are eating that is causing rancidification.
Interesting.
And what a lot of chickens are eating are rendered feathers and all kinds of ugly things, ground up chicken feet and stuff like that. And if you recycle these things, the chickens wind up eating themselves in 6-week cycles. If they do that too often, then the meat goes rancid and the customers won't buy it.
Yuck. Okay.
I want to mention one more thing about human genetics, and that is, why are we so sensitive to rancid smells? Okay? It's because all the people that were not sensitive to rancidity didn't have as many babies as people that were sensitive to rancidity. And their genes have been eliminated from the genetic pool.
Interesting.
So your sensitivity, this meat smells funny, it smells rancid, is a way of saving your own life.
Wow.
Or if you stick your nose in a supplement bottle and it smells rancid, then you don't want to eat that. You throw it in the garbage.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Let's go back in history and talk about fermented cod liver oil. It's really cool to meet somebody who actually knows about this, because not very many people do.
Yeah.
But I think you said that you did have spent a lot of time in Norway.
Yeah. And I'm always very interested in cultural things and history of food and things like that. So I went to Norway several times, and I always kept, and even on the internet, I've heard about fermented cod liver oil. And so when I was in Norway, I asked some local people, what is fermented cod liver oil? And they said, well, it's the traditional way that Norwegians, especially rural Norwegians that lived in fjords that were hard to get to. In other words, they didn't have a lot of supplements and vitamins available to them. They had to live off the land. And of course, in Norway, in the winter, it's completely dark. If they didn't have vitamin D in their food that they eat, they would not exist, okay? Norway is also a huge country with only a 4 million person population. So back then, what the Norwegians did, well, first of all, when you're doing fishing, you want to try to use as much of the animal as possible. And cod livers are very high in vitamin A, which is something they didn't have in their diet because of the fact that they didn't have a lot of vegetables in the winter, obviously. If you eat carrots, you don't need to eat any vitamin A supplement at all. And they also need vitamin D. And cod liver happens to have a lot of that in it. So how do you extract it? Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't have fancy chemical factories back then, 1,000 years ago.
Right.
So what they did is they took a wooden barrel, they salted the barrel, because salt, as you know, is a good preservative. Then they would fill the barrel up with either whole or minced cod livers, and this is usually outside. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's a very mild climate. And then they would put in water and brine, and they would put the top on it, and they would just let it sit for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And after 6 months, there's a fermentation that takes place, not of the oil. Mm-hmm. The fermentation is of the liver, right. The mass of the liver, and that liberates cod liver oil from the liver biomass. Mm-hmm. That oil then floats on top. And since this is an anaerobic process, that means a process that does not require air, there's usually a blanket of carbon dioxide above the oil that protects it from rancidification. Mm-hmm. So colder climate, a barrel of cod liver, water, brine, and you don't open the lid all the time to let oxygen in, you could wind up with an oil that could save your life. And the people that figured out how to do that, they got their vitamin A, they got their vitamin D, sunshine vitamin, and they lived. The people that didn't do that died. Right? So again, the genes were propagated of smart people that knew how to separate the oil from the liver. Well, that was 1,000 years ago. Today, you would never consider using this process because in this process, it's very much like making pickles. Okay, in the case of pickles, you take brine, you take cucumbers, you put them in an open barrel, and you let it ferment. And in this case, you're not eating the livers, you're eating the pickles. And the vinegar that's produced is, just thrown away. In this case, the product produced is the oil and the liver is the waste. You don't eat that fermented liver.
Why?
Well, liver's got a lot of cholesterol in it. Liver has a lot of toxins in it, a lot of heavy metals. You've got to remember what a liver is. A liver is the big filter that filters all the garbage out of the bloodstream. So any liver is going to have some toxic substances in it. And if you can keep those two things separate, the biomass of liver away from the oil will have a relatively low amount of metals, et cetera, in it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And since Norway is a very pristine environment and the water in the North Sea is very clean, the livers from cod usually are very clean.
Unlike other livers from other fish in other parts of the world.
Like tuna or shark liver, or, that kind of larger fish.
Right.
So anyway, that's an ancient way of doing it. The farmer or the fisherman would use that oil or sell it locally. It didn't hang around very long. It wasn't very stable. And the benefits of it outweighed the negatives. The negatives being that there is partial rancidification, of course. And there are some toxic metals in it, of course, but the benefits of vitamin A and D overcome the negative parts.
Because they were trying to stay alive, and they didn't really have any other choice.
Survival of ancient man, if you will.
Yeah.
And the Norwegians are very, very clever and smart people. In modern days, you would never consider making cod liver oil that way. You would take cod livers. You would grind them up. You would use giant filter presses to press out the oil. And you would keep everything under nitrogen or some inert gas to make sure you get no rancidification. In some cases, they can take the cod liver oil and chemically treat it. And there's nothing wrong with that because you can remove heavy metals this way. And then they do a distillation, which is a purified cod liver oil that has very low metals. It's more stable than extra virgin cod liver oil, which still has the metals in it. And that cod liver oil is still unstable, but it has a much better shelf life, maybe 90 days. And so I always recommend to people, even if you buy modern cod liver oil, keep it in your refrigerator. Don't buy a lot of it at any one time. If you want to take it as a supplement, it's fine. And that's it. The story you told me, and you did not really influence my opinion on this at all, as I did.
Yeah, we only talked for about 5 or 10 minutes before we got on the Skype call.
Right, but I do my own research. I've known about this for 10 years. And basically, you would never use the ancient method of fermentation of cod livers to make cod liver oil. And the idea that some people are saying that it's fermented cod liver oil is completely bogus. It's a lie. It's a misrepresentation because oils can't be fermented. It's the livers that are fermented to release the oil. Right. Okay.
So why do you say that's a lie and bogus? Because I didn't say anything about that to you.
Because the implication is if the people that don't know chemistry or food processing, they would think that this oil, this cod liver oil, is made using a fermentation process on the oil. If you say fermented cod liver oil, it's like saying fermented cheese, right? The product of the fermentation is the cheese, and the yeast and stuff like that that's in the cheese is still in there, okay? But there is no fermentation organism inside cod liver oil, and it is only produced using fermentation, which is a very antiquated, ancient, less than ideal way of making cod liver oil.
So what you're saying is it can be deceptive to the consumer because they're thinking that they're getting a fermented product. When you ferment pickles or you ferment cheese, the product that you eat is fermented. When you consume fermented cod liver oil, the product is not fermented.
It's not fermented. It's just a process used to destroy a liver so that it releases its oil.
Okay. All right. Got it.
There's much better ways of doing that.
Why do you say there's much better ways of doing it? Because wouldn't you want to go back to the traditional way of doing something?
No, not at all. Some traditional ways of doing things is extremely toxic. For instance, traditional ways of drying peanuts on an open field, even if it's raining and stuff like that, you're going to get aflatoxin on the peanuts, and those are liver toxic materials. Ancient ways are not always the best way. Most of the time, 99% of the time, modern technology under inert gas, using highly refined food industry know-how, is the way to make these things, especially making things that are in themselves sensitive to light damage, oxidation, etc. Whenever we handle oils in our plant, where we do a supercritical extraction of seed oils like chia, perilla, and flax oil, we have special filters on all the lights that filter out UV. We have inert gas in all our tanks that protects the oils against rancidification. And we also add antioxidants to promote to stop the rancidification. Now, the fish oil people, the cod liver oil people, they all add antioxidants like vitamin E to their oils to try to stabilize them on the shelf. But these oils are still very, very unstable.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about, I don't know how it's done in the Green Pasture Products plant or whatever it is that he's doing in Nebraska. I don't know the details. I've never been there. I've only read about it, and so I can tell you what it is they're doing. And I mentioned, when I first called you, I mentioned a little bit about this. I'm going to talk about it, and then I want to hear you go into detail of what you think, what they would have to do in order to make it safe. Although you say it's not safe at all, I think is what you said.
My first analysis is that it does not look safe to me.
Okay. So here's what it is. They say that they have a greenhouse that they've refurbished to be able to ferment the livers in this greenhouse on their farm. They have fermentation vats, which I Googled and found mostly stainless steel. Fermentation vats, which are used for wine. Now, it's possible that they might be wood.
But stainless steel would be fine.
Would it? Because I thought you said that stainless steel could damage the oil.
It could, because there's obviously chromium in stainless steel. It depends on the contact time. Okay. Metal ions are not all that soluble in oil. Okay. But cod livers themselves, if they're really using cod livers, I don't know.
Pollock and cod, apparently.
Yeah. But cod livers and pollock livers have a lot more heavy metals in them than stainless steel would have.
Right. Okay. So I'll just tell you what I know. So possibly they're wood. It's possible they could find 10,000 gallon vats that are made out of wood. But most of them that I found were steel. I don't know if this is a climate controlled facility. When he talked about it on the FAQ page of his website, he said that it was that there was a lot of sun coming in, that there was a solar roof in the greenhouse. And he said that originally said that the oil was exposed to sunlight. But then later, after this report came out in August, the website changed. And now it says that the oils are not exposed to sunlight. But you can find it on archive.org if you go back and see what it used to say on their website, that the oil was exposed to sunlight. Don't know if the vats have lids or if they're on or off or if they're taken. I don't know any of that. I do know that they say they leave them to ferment for 6 months.
Yeah, it's the classical Norwegian technique that's basically been scaled up. And your suspicion about the light is absolutely correct. If they were exposed to light, that oil would be totally rancid. Okay, and if they're not using any inert gas, the chances are that there's also rancidity. And this is
And
just.
what do you mean? What is inert gas? Again, I'm not a chemistry person.
For instance, nitrogen or argon are gases that do not react with things under normal conditions. And nitrogen, 80% of the air you breathe is nitrogen, but you can get 100% nitrogen. There's no oxygen in it. And if you blanket an oil bath or a vat with pure nitrogen, there's not going to be any oxidation.
Okay.
Argon works better because argon happens to be a gas that is heavier than air. And therefore, if you open the top of a vat, if you have argon in it, the argon stays in it. Whereas in nitrogen, it could mix with air and you get a little oxygen in there. Argon is just much more expensive.
Okay.
But this technology that you've described to me sounds like, and also the name green pasture, immediately when I hear names like that, I worry about misrepresentation of green and environmentally friendly.
I think they're actually called that because they started as a dairy farm. They are still a dairy farm. I think they originally created a butter oil, and then he started making. So it's green pasture means where the cows are.
Yeah,
it's a
but
farm.
In any case, it's a scale up of the classical Norwegian technology that was also a practice in Denmark and in Sweden. It's basically taking that wooden barrel and making it into stainless steel and making it 100 times bigger. And the length of the fermentation is about the same as they used in ancient Norway. It is the same technology. It is disgusting.
Why disgusting?
It's disgusting.
Why?
Well, because you're sitting in a fermentation tank for so many months, and all kinds of side reactions and unwanted processes can take place. And that's just not really great science. It's not really great, food science. It's just disgusting. And, livers themselves are pretty disgusting. It's a byproduct of fishing of cod or Manhattan. Manhattan is nowhere near the same class of fish as a cod. It comes from a different place. But these are byproducts. These are animal byproducts. And then what is in those livers depends on where the fish came from. The amount of heavy metals depends on which ocean it came from. And then you're just letting bacteria break this thing down, and the oil floats to the surface. Some metals are very soluble in oil. It's, to me, it's a disgusting thing.
Are the metals in the oil then, or are they getting extracted? I mean, how do we know?
Most of the metals stay in the water phase, but some metals do go into the oil phase, especially things like mercury, chromium. You will get parts per million, parts per billion in the oil. That's why if that company made the oil this way, the first thing I would say is you now must take this oil and refine it.
And I don't know if that's happening. Yeah, I don't know. You
have to build a factory with the distillation and purify the oil, because taking that oil and just separating it from the water phase, washing it a little bit and then packaging it or putting it into capsules is really bad news.
Because the metals could still be in.
Because of metals, because of you haven't purified the oil, so there's going to be epoxides in it. There's going to be endoperoxides. There's going to be aldehydes, ketones, things that are breakdown products of polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Yeah, so that's the thing, the rancidity. One of the things you said earlier before we jumped on the call was that the reason that the Norwegian people thrived on this stuff was because, the reason they did it was because they had no choice.
Right.
Again, there are cultures that had to be cannibals.
Yeah.
That they had to find a way to live.
They live on the edge of the Arctic Circle, so they're survivors.
Yeah.
The Vikings were Norwegian.
They had to find a way to get the nutrients they needed, so they were creative and found a way. There was a trade-off, and that trade-off was rancidity, and so you had to be real careful probably how much you took, and it's a trade-off.
Well, not only that, they usually made it in small batches for their own use or for use in the village. So the amount sitting around and the turnover was still okay. Mm-hmm. But if now you're making this in giant vats and it sits around for 6 months, and you said it was in the Midwest somewhere, and certainly the Midwest does not have a Norwegian climate, so it's a lot warmer. And in a greenhouse means it's going to be a lot warmer. You're going to have a lot of rancid oil.
So in order for him to do this in a way that would actually not be rancid, let's just talk about that. Theoretically, say he's on the... Because again, I don't know. I haven't been there. Haven't seen it. I just have questions. I have a lot of questions because I promoted this stuff. I told people to take this stuff.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay.
And that's why I feel so responsible.
Okay.
And I feel I feel a moral obligation to tell people about this. And that's why I'm making all these videos. People say, oh, you're trying to attack this guy and his family and his business. No, I'm not. I'm absolutely not.
Trying to save people's lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good for you. Good for you.
It's not easy. People attack you and, but no, I'm worried. I'm very worried. So if he were to be able to do this, what would it take? Describe to me how he would be able to do this in this greenhouse and make it work and make it be safe.
All right. There's one way you could do it is you could start with your cod livers and use the newest technology for separating out oil, which involves cold pressing, which involves disruption of the livers, cold pressing, and then isolation of the oil, and then either purifying the oil or selling it as is. That would be reasonable. Okay. The way he's doing it, if he wants to stick to his fermentation technology, which I think is a gimmick in this case, it's a gimmick that's going to hurt people. You would have to take that oil and use molecular distillation or some other purification method to purify the oil, remove the rancid part of it, and you can do that, and remove the heavy metals from it, because the liver is going to have a lot of heavy metals in it. And heavy metals are somewhat soluble in the oil. So either way, either start doing the right technology from the very beginning and do it the way the Norwegians do it today. They don't use this old method anymore. And then the other way is to take the oil that you're making by this ancient process and using modern chemistry to clean it up.
So he's got to have some kind of factory to be able to do that distillation you're talking about to remove the metals?
Yeah. Now, I don't know what their operations are like, but maybe they do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, maybe they do.
Now, as far as the actual storage, as they're fermenting the oil, the livers to make the oil, what would that have to look like? What would the climate, like you said, it's probably warmer in Nebraska?
Fermentation processes are very temperature dependent, and they probably put this in a greenhouse because you need to have a certain temperature for this fermentation to take place. Okay. Now in the Midwest, you also get some very cold temperatures, and so they might use some sort of greenhouse as a climate control measure to get the temperature they need to keep the fermentation going at a certain rate.
So how would they be able to make it safe in the vat? So they have to do the molecular distillation of some sort.
To make it safe in a vat, you would have to make sure no light gets into the vat. You would have to keep the vat under inert gas like nitrogen. And then you would have to take the oil and refine it by molecular distillation or some other chemical method to remove the rancid part and to remove peroxides and endoperoxides.
Okay. And the temperature of the greenhouse?
Well, I would guess that the reason why they use a greenhouse is to keep the temperature warm because the fermentation occurs much faster when it's warmer. For every 10 degrees increase in temperature, you double the rate of reaction. And you got to keep the temperature below a certain point because at a certain temperature you will kill the organisms.
Again, when they did this in Norway, it was cold climates.
It was a cold climate, but the Norwegians had plenty of time. And so you could just let it sit for 6 months or a year. If it's really cold, it would sit for a year, and the oil just floats to the surface. And then the Norwegian fishermen, they would just go out with a ladle and scoop some oil out of the vat for their own use.
Right. Right.
Or put it in bottles, sell it in the village.
That's what I've heard, but it's a different story if you're doing it in Nebraska.
Right, and then once rancidification starts, it's virtually impossible to stop it. The only way you can stop it is to use a chemical process of distillation, and then you can stop it. And the stuff that stays back in the retort basically is stuff you throw away.
Okay. How can you tell if it's rancid if you're producing this stuff? How would you be able to know if it's rancid?
That's relatively easy. There are chemical methods for measuring peroxide levels. That's a standard thing that every fat and oil company knows how to do. You can also use spectroscopic methods. You can also use methods that involve high-pressure liquid chromatography. So it can be monitored.
One of the things that came out of the lab tests, and again, this is way above my pay grade. I don't understand this stuff at all. But there were rancidity tests that they did, and the woman that analyzed, the whistleblower, I guess, who analyzed the lab reports, said that it was so rancid that it was like beyond rancid because it didn't have the whatever it was, the markers that they tested didn't show rancidity. But she said at a certain point you can't look at those markers. You have to look at something else. So I don't understand. I know you haven't seen it.
I can explain it.
Okay.
Okay, because we work with oils all the time and we do this testing all the time.
Okay.
It's real simple. Take something like chia oil. It could be cod liver oil, but let's just take chia oil, something I have a lot of experience with. Well, what you first start measuring is the peroxide value. And you do that with any standard oil, it gives you a peroxide value. If the peroxide value is over 10, it means it's rancid. If it's below 10, generally accepted, it's safe to eat. Okay? However, if you take that oil that's already above 10 and let it sit longer, it becomes more rancid, but the peroxide value starts going down.
That's what
and the reason for that is that the oil is starting to polymerize. It's turning into varnish.
That's exactly what she said. That's exactly what she said.
Right. So let me give you an example. You take linseed oil, sometimes known as flax oil. You put a drop of it on your tabletop. You come back a few days later, you can peel it off as a layer. It's totally polymerized. It's totally rancid. Okay? And that's the basis of most furniture finishes are made with linseed oil, and it's called a drying oil. It is polyunsaturated, reacts with oxygen, and they get it to polymerize, and that's your furniture finish.
So basically what you're saying is this stuff potentially is so rancid that you could use it as paint, which is really funny that you said that because I did not tell you that, and she actually said that when I interviewed her.
You can put it on your walls, but I wouldn't put it in my body. But if you put it on the balls, it's going to smell like fish.
Okay, so you probably shouldn't use it for that either. All right. It's really weird that you said that. I just said a lot of things she said, and that's bizarre because literally today was the first time I ever called you. I emailed you last night. You got the email.
Yeah.
I said, "Can you do an interview?" And you said, "Yeah." And that we talked for maybe 10 minutes on the phone, and then 10 minutes maybe before we got on Skype before I started interviewing. But horrifying. Okay. One more question, and then we're going to wrap this up. And thanks again for all this information, helping a lot of people understand this. One of the things that Dave Wetzel said to me, the man that started this company, is that I I said, how do I store this? And you mentioned this before. He said you can store it in the cupboard for 6 months or a year, and it won't go bad.
That's completely ridiculous. Okay. Now, if it's totally polymerized and it's totally oxidized to the point where it turns into basically furniture finish, then of course it will be stable, but it will have no nutritional value, or it could actually have a negative nutritional value because epoxides, endoperoxides, all these things are carcinogens. They're mutagens.
They're what?
Mutagens.
Mutagens.
Let me explain what a mutagen is. If you take DNA and it reacts with something, you basically have mutated your DNA. And things like peroxides, epoxides are all mutagens because they alter DNA. And altered DNA usually leads to things like cancer or early cell death or other impacts.
What about heart failure?
Rancid oils are definitely number one when it comes to hardening of the arteries, plaque formation in arteries, and early death.
What about pulmonary embolism?
I can't really address that directly. I would have to do more research, but it certainly is possible. But I would say the biggest risk is a coronary type risk.
Okay.
Embolisms can come from a lot of different things, and one of them could be hardening of the arteries, the capillaries in the lungs, which could break off and then form an embolism. But that could come from a variety of things.
Okay. All right. So the point is, but if he did do it right and it was perfect and it was not rancid and it was fine, you still couldn't store it in the cupboard.
No, you want to store cod liver oil in a refrigerator. Okay. You want to store fish oil in a refrigerator. I store all the supplements that I take in the refrigerator, and I just don't leave anything to doubt. Okay? Let's say I have a vitamin, and it's just one of the vitamins are unstable in there at room temperature. Well, then why not just store it in the refrigerator? We have big refrigerators. Take your beer out and put your vitamins in.
I love it. They're food supplements. Shouldn't we care for them? I've never heard anybody say that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to add anything? I think you've been pretty clear.
Well, also, I just want to mention that I've done a video with Dr. Mercola on edible oils, and I'm doing another one soon. And there's two things I want to say. One, cod liver oil, be careful about dosing. Vitamin A can be very toxic. Mm-hmm. And if you eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of greens, you're getting plenty of vitamin A. You don't have to take cod liver oil. You're better off using things like krill oil or the new oil that we developed from herring roe. The other thing that has to be said is that when you buy salad oil and things like that, use olive oil. Use the cheapest olive oils, the ones that don't have the chlorophyll in them, the ones that aren't green, because chlorophyll causes the decomposition of those oils. And when you buy oil, only buy a little bit. So if you keep olive oil in your cupboard, just buy a little bottle of Bertolli Light or one of the other brands, the cheap ones, and use it up and then buy a new one. Don't buy big bottles of oil, of any oil. Do not store oil for a long time, any oil.
Okay, great. All right. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. The CEO of a nutraceutical company. I mean, you're a busy guy. So, yeah. But like you said, you wanted to be able to do this because you do care about human health, and I'm grateful to you.
Well, Anne-Marie, I have to really give you a lot of credit because you're obviously interested in human health and not bad-mouthing a company. You're not interested any economic impacts against that company. You're obviously interested in people being healthy, and I think that is a great platform to be on.
Well, thank you. Keep doing your good work that you're doing, and I'll put the link to your website below, and I hope I run into you again in the future. We'll maybe do an interview again down the road.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dr. Rudi.